Aloha mai kako, and welcome to the third session of our dossier writing workshop series. My name is Joyce Yamada, and I am the Professional Development Coordinator from UH Maui College. As a member of the UHCC Professional Development Consortium, I am pleased to introduce today's session, Writing Tips for Your Dossier, which will be presented by Professor Leigh Dooley from Kapiʻolani Community College. Leigh began organizing and facilitating dossier and contract renewal writing preparation workshops about 20 years ago. She has a lot of experience doing this. And Leigh's presentation will be followed by a discussion circle where administrators and others can share their views as well as respond to any questions you may have. We're also so pleased that the contract renewal system guru, Sandra Ueno, and UHPA Representative Jim Kardash have been present at all of these sessions to offer guidance. We are grateful to our presenters for taking the time to share their experiences and insights with all of us. As you know, creating your dossier is more of an art than an exact science. The review process is a subjective one that entails general guidelines, both formal and informal, for you to consider when developing your own document. Furthermore, we know that each of our campuses differs slightly in the interpretation of the guidelines and best practices. We hope that you will use these sessions as a means to inspire your approach to developing your own dossier, but we also strongly encourage you to speak with your peers in your division and discipline on your campus. The more information you have, the stronger your document will be. With that said, let's get on with our session. Thank you, Leigh.
Thank you, Joyce, and thank everybody for spending your afternoon here with us. And I know your time is very precious. Writing your dossier can be a very stressful process, but it doesn't have to be. And knowing that you have support in this work is what can alleviate a lot of that stress. So my goal for this workshop is that at the end of the hour and a half, the time that we spend together, you feel informed and supported, and like you know what you can do to get even more information and support as you need it. So with that said, what I want you to do, please, is to have a pencil and paper handy, or open a tab, Google Doc, an empty Google Doc. Not so much to take notes, though of course you're welcome to take notes, but because I'll be asking you questions periodically throughout the presentation, and as you respond to those questions for yourself, it will mean that you have something to take away from the workshop that will be useful for you as you continue to work on your dossier. So grab a pencil and paper, or open a Google Doc. Okay, first thing I want us to do is a chat blast. Most of you are probably familiar with this, but how much did you hear? I suddenly went mute. Did you hear a description of the chat blast?
No, we heard most of you are familiar with.
Okay, most of you are familiar with chat blasts, but just in case you're not, here's a brief description. Here's the question: how far along are you? And I want you to type your answer into the chat, but don't press enter yet. We're going to give you a minute or so to do that, and then I'll say enter, and you will all enter your answers at once. So just take a minute to type in an answer to the question: how far along are you? Okay, enter. Oh, we have a big variety. Good, everyone from not at all to nearly done. That's fantastic. Okay. Next, I want to know, another chat blast, how worried are you about this document and this process? Please type your answer in the chat, but don't press enter yet. Okay, press enter. Oh, not too worried, not worried. Very. Okay, remember what you put, because I'm going to ask you to revisit that answer a little bit later on in the process. Okay, now if you have already started, fantastic. If you haven't, now is the time. You want to avoid the frantic freeway. It's really difficult to put together a quality dossier in a weekend. So now is the best time to start. During today's presentation, we're going to go through 6 basic steps. You can see them here and talk about good things to do in each step of the process. But if you can do this process in a way that is not stressful, in a way that is paced and measured and not frantic, you're going to feel a lot better by the end. So start now. And one of the first things you can do to start is to get your bearings and ask yourself, are you prepared for this journey? One of the things I most recommend doing is to find a buddy or a small support team to work with on this process. This buddy could be someone who's also working on a dossier right now, or it could be someone close to you who's not working on a dossier right now. It could be someone that's hyper organized and super helpful, like, I don't know how many of you know Kelly Nakamura on our campus, Kapiʻolani Community College. But if you've got a Kelly Nakamura on your campus, tap into that fantastic resource. What your buddy can do with you is you can set up joint work sessions. I even know of people who have opened up Zoom together and they don't really talk to each other. They just work with Zoom open to keep each other accountable to the working period. And even if the person isn't working on a dossier, they can work on something else. They're just there for you as you work on your dossier. This person can send you encouraging reminders, and they can hold you to deadlines that you have set for yourself. So I cannot recommend strongly enough finding a buddy or a small support team in order to work on this dossier with you so that you're not alone. So I want you to take a few minutes and write down on that pencil and paper or on your Google Doc, who might be a good buddy for you. Think about it. Of course, you'd ask them and have the opportunity to say no, but who might you ask? Okay, I hope you've got a couple of names, a couple of people to ask. And we're going to go on. And next thing to do to help orient yourself is to check out some sample dossiers. Some campuses actually have a dossier library that you can access and take a look at some samples. Some campuses have exemplary dossier lists that they make available to people who are going up for tenure and promotion. And even if your campus doesn't have either one of these, you can just ask your colleagues, is it okay for me to look at your dossier? You can look at who got tenure and promotion in the last round and look at some of the names on there and ask those colleagues if it's possible to look at their dossiers as samples. They can tell you no, they're not obligated to share with you, but most of our colleagues are super eager to help each other. So I highly recommend checking out some sample dossiers. But of course, be careful not to plagiarize. We have had problems with plagiarism in the past, and it is grounds for dismissal. So be very careful not to plagiarize when you look at sample dossiers. Another thing to remember is looking at a sample dossier and emulating it is not a guarantee of success. It's just helpful to give you a sense of what's possible. Okay, so take a minute and ask yourself, who can you ask about a sample? Jot it down on your paper or on your Google Doc. Okay, I hope you've got some names. And next, get a sense, as Joyce said at the very beginning, your department and your campus has a different dossier culture and expectations than other departments on your campus and other campuses. So it's really important to get a sense of your department and your campus's dossier culture and expectations. That can include, like, what are the valuable elements to your particular campus or department? Is there a strong emphasis on peer evaluations or student evaluations? Is there a strong emphasis on having a cogent assessment discussion? Is it really important to your campus that you have clear links to the strategic plan? These are the kinds of questions it's good to know the answers to as you're writing your dossier. Also, presentation expectations are good to know. For an example, if you're a writing teacher like I am, you better write your dossier pretty well, and you better not have very many grammar errors, whereas that might be more forgivable in a different discipline or department. And if you're in the math sciences department, it could be that your department has specific expectations about the way data is presented. Maybe they want to see charts or graphs. Maybe they want to see a specific kind of analysis. It's good to know that ahead of time. Whereas in the writing discipline, maybe we don't really care how you present your data. However you do it is fine. So it's good to know what your department and campus dossier culture and expectations are. Also, contractually, our DPCs are permitted to write into their guidelines an exclusion policy. So some departments allow for the exclusion of members from the department personnel committees, and other departments do not. So find out if your department allows for the exclusion of members or doesn't. That's information you'll want to know as you submit your dossier. So take a minute to ask yourself, who's knowledgeable about all this stuff on your campus? Could be more than one person, or in your department. Jot down a few names. And as Joyce said, today we have some administrators that are here that will be able to give you some information about your campus dossier culture too, at the very end with the question and answer. All right, moving on. It's a good idea to read the guidelines. Read those guidelines from beginning to end so that you know them very, very well. The current guidelines, last I checked, were not out yet. They will be coming out very soon. Usually they're out in early to mid-August. Contractually, they must be out 6 weeks before the deadline. So they're coming out really soon. But it's okay to look at last year's guidelines. The guidelines themselves are not going to change. It's just that they will be updated. The forms will be updated with the correct dates. For the guidelines to change, this is a long process. The unions involved, we would know that the changes were coming. So we know that there aren't going to be changes to the guidelines for this year. And when you look at those guidelines, pay special attention to the in-rank expectations for the rank to which you are applying. So if you're going up for tenure and promotion, you'll be going up for C3. And you need to demonstrate in your dossier that you are already operating at the C3 level in order to get your promotion. So you need to know those in-rank expectations very well in order to prove that you're meeting them. If you're going up for C4, you look for the C4 guidelines. If you're going up for C5, you look for those guidelines. They're in an appendix of the guidelines. They're on pages A6 through A8 for last year's guidelines, and probably be the same for this next round. So know the guidelines, pay special attention to in-rank expectations. And then consider your dossier's organization. You can organize, unlike contract renewals, well, on our campus anyway, contract renewals in the past have had very strict organization. We just revised it so that they are more flexible about organization. but you have a lot of flexibility on how you organize your dossier. And you can use your organization to highlight your strengths. And you can also use it to make review of your dossier easier. You really want your reviewers smiling and having an easy time of it when they're reviewing your dossier. So use your organization in order to accomplish these two things. One standard organization that is frequently used for people is these 4 categories. This is page 10.1. It's the last page of the forms, first page of the forms. I don't remember. It's in the guidelines. And you can see how they are asking you for information on primary duties, professional self-development activities, college and community service activities, and leadership abilities. And many people use that those 4 categories in order to organize their dossiers. So that's pretty common organization. Here's an example of a table of contents that utilizes that particular structure of organization. You see the 4 major categories are right there. But that's not your only option. Remember those in-rank expectations that I told you should pay special attention to? Here are the in-rank expectations for C4. So if you're going up for C4, you might want to take a look at what those expectations are. I hope you can see where I've outlined in kind of yellow various pieces, phrases from this text. And you can use those phrases as a way to organize your dossier. Many people use this list, it's kind of a list, as a checklist in order to measure your dossier against, in order to see if you're really meeting the expectations for the rank to which you're applying. So why not make that easy for them? Make that super easy by using that list as a way to organize your dossier. So here's a sample table of contents where it's organized by that list. And it touches on all 4 of those original categories that we talked about. One of the additional benefits of doing it this way, I found personally, was that leadership comes a little earlier. In the previous one that we looked at, leadership is last, and you've talked about tons of stuff already by then. So you don't really get to frame much of your work in terms of leadership if you save it for the very end. This way, leadership comes a little bit earlier in the process. So it's a way to kind of highlight leadership. It's kind of especially important for C4 and C5. So that's another option, but those aren't the only options. Here's a sample of table of contents where someone has basically used those 4 categories, but worried that there were some in-rank expectations that weren't addressed by those 4 categories. This one especially, curricular innovation and currency in the discipline. So they used the categories, moved leadership up a little to make it a little bit earlier in the document, not like at the very end. And then they added in this category that they felt had been neglected by those 4 categories that was important to the in-rank expectations. So this is kind of a combination of the 2 systems of organization. That's another option. And here's yet another option. This person did a really good job of highlighting their strengths. So we've got the primary responsibilities. We've got understanding the whole student, which was an important part of their in-rank expectations. We've got leadership. We've got campus contributions. And then this person had lots and lots of work done around social responsibility, service learning and work in the community, and wanted to highlight that because it was really very important to her as part of her contributions to the college and to her students. So she gave it a category, social responsibility, and it allowed her to highlight that. Then she went on to professional development and growth. And then take a look at section 7, modeling lifelong learning. She was working at the time, she's since achieved it, but at the time she was working toward her PhD in ed psych. Now she could easily have put her PhD in ed psych under professional development and growth, but she chose not to because she wanted to highlight it to really focus attention on it. So she gave it its own category. So that's the kind of thing you can do in order to highlight your strengths. So considering these various options for organization, at this moment, what is appealing to you as a possible organizational structure? Jot that down on your piece of paper or on your Google Doc. And why? Why does it appeal to you? Okay, let's move on. We're on step 2. We're going to map the route. Where will you be and when? Schedule time to work on your dossier. You know what happens if you don't schedule time to work on your dossier? You don't work on your dossier. You have a billion things to do. I know how busy we all are. And if you don't actually make time in your schedule to do it, chances are it won't get done. So actually schedule it. Schedule it on your phone, your electronic scheduling device, or on your paper calendar, if that's how you do it. Actually block off time and really use that time to work on your dossier. Writing this dossier is part of your job. You're allowed to spend time on it. So block out time, protect it fiercely, and use it to work on your dossier. And then calendar some important dates. Got to calendar the deadline. We don't know the deadline yet because we haven't seen the guidelines yet, but it's usually the first Friday in October. So you can kind of think around that date as a possible deadline. Put that on your calendar, at least as tentative deadline. Calendar workshops. Sandra Ueno's office is doing some electronic dossier submission workshops for us coming up pretty soon on Tuesday the 27th and Thursday the 29th, both days 10 to 11:30. Calendar those. Be sure to go to one of those or both. Submitting electronically is very different than our previous submission processes. This group has one more workshop coming up next week on evaluation and assessment in your dossier. And that's coming up on Wednesday, 3 to 4:30. Put that in your calendar. And who knows, your campus may offer other workshops or other opportunities. So calendar those. Also calendar partial completion deadlines for yourself. Set them for yourself. By this date, I'll be done with X. By this date, I'll be done with Y. You break up that work however it works best for you, but schedule some partial completion deadlines and give those to your buddy so your buddy can hold you accountable to them. Can send you an encouraging reminder a few days before. Remember, you were going to finish with your professional philosophy by this date, and can hold you accountable on the day. Did you finish? You were going to finish by yesterday. If you didn't, I don't know, maybe they'll punish you. Okay, next step, number 3, gas up and go, because you know what? You'll never finish if you don't begin. One of the first things that you need to do to gas up is to confirm your eligibility. This was a form that's in the guidelines packet, and it needs to be filled out and signed. And your HR department, just like ours, is probably not pleased to get these at the very last minute. So confirm your eligibility as soon as possible. Also, your individual campus may have a supplemental process for confirming eligibility. On our campus, there's another form to fill out that HR fills out, and then you take that form and add this form and take it to the dean, or they forward it to the dean. So figure out what your individual campus process for confirming eligibility is, and do it as soon as you can. Don't wait till the last minute. You don't need anybody irritated at you. That's not the right emotional atmosphere to be working on your dossier in. And then set up the organization of your site. You will have control over the organization of your site for your electronic dossier submission. Do you like the 4 usuals? the organization that we talked about before? Do you like the in-rank expectations list? Do you want to focus on your strengths or do some combination? Go ahead and set that up in your site so that as you work on your dossier, it's all nicely organized for you. And then choose something that's easy for you to start with, because it's hard to start. So start with something easy. What sounds easy to you? Is it the student evaluations and setting up the tables? Does that sound doable? Is it the peer evaluation summaries and your responses to them? Does that sound easy? The professional philosophy statement? Listing your professional development activities or your service activities? Whatever feels the most doable. You don't have to do everything in order. You can do it in any order you want. So start with what looks easy and then go. All right, so here's another one of my questions. I want you to jot down on your Google Doc or on your paper, what might you start with? What seems easy and doable to you? Okay, the next step is kind of a nice one. You let someone else drive for a while. But first, is the car in good enough shape for them to drive it? So consider your audience. There are certain things that you can do in your dossier that might make it easier for your readers to evaluate. One is section summaries. Section summaries, you know, we talked about those major categories in the table of contents. It's many people put a little summary of the entire section right at the beginning of the summary of the section. That makes it super easy for people to go back and refresh their memories about what it is that you talked about in that particular section. So section summaries are a not too difficult option for making your dossier easier to review. Another thing that some people use is tables, not just for presenting data, but also for presenting information. So they can present their, say, the professional development activities in tables that lists the name of the activity, maybe the date of the activity, what they took away from the activity, and how the activity affected what they did in their professional life. And that brings us to so what? Always be asking yourself as you're reviewing your dossier, so what? So I went to this workshop on learning communities. So what? What impact did it have on your professional practice? So you served on the budget committee. So what? What did you do on the budget committee? How did it benefit the campus? And how did it benefit you in your professional practice? Another thing that many people do is they link their work, the things that they do, to various things, including student learning outcomes, campus plans, or the strategic plan, or the strategic plan. So it's a good idea to do this. Administrators tend to like it if you link your work to one or more of these things. Find out which is most important for your own campus. Now, we all are asked to include a professional philosophy in our dossiers, but many people also include a leadership philosophy, especially as they're going up for C4 and C5. That's another option, to include a leadership philosophy to create a frame for the work that they've done around leadership, the way your professional philosophy creates a nice frame around the work that you do, say, teaching or counseling. Another thing that people do in their dossiers that seems to have a positive effect is they end with a look to the future. Certainly not required, but it gives readers this sense of the future contributions that you plan to make. So which of these appeal to you right now, if any? None of these are required things to include. They're just things that you might want to think about including. Do any of them appeal to you right now to use in your dossier? Okay, and then turn it over to somebody else, somebody you trust. Get feedback and incorporate it into your dossier. If you can manage it, I would recommend finding someone in your department, but not a member of your DPC, they're not allowed to do this. Someone in your department, someone outside your department, for the perspective of someone who doesn't really know much about what goes on in the department. That's because there are some review levels, like at the TPRC level, where some people who are not in your discipline are going to be looking at your document. They need to be able to understand what you're talking about too. Get someone from another campus to look at it, because at the TPRC level, someone from another campus will be looking at your dossier. And get someone good at editing to look at your document. Who might you ask for feedback? Take a minute and jot down, if you could jot down 4 names, one for each of those categories, you'll be doing pretty good. If you're worried about this being so much work for someone, try to pick someone who you know is going up for promotion in the near future. And then this can be an exchange proposition where they give you feedback this year and you give them feedback next year or the year after. Okay, I hope you have some names. And then finally, consider asking feedback givers to use a criteria sheet for the rank. I'm happy to share these, but you can also make them yourself very easily. All these is the in-rank expectations for C3, C4, and C5 broken down into little discrete bits and put into a table. So your feedback giver can take a look at the elements of the expectations, can circle whether or not they feel like you've demonstrated that you have met that expectation, and can add a few comments in the table. That's super helpful feedback. So I have these for C3, C4, and C5, but you can easily make them yourself too, just by looking at those in-rank expectations. All right, we're on step 5. Plan for your arrival. In your review chain, there is a TPRC review. It's the second to the last review. The chancellor is the one who makes the ultimate decision, but right before the chancellor, the TPRC will review your dossier. So you can exclude up to 10 colleagues from your TPRC. In order to do this in a productive way, you need to know your campus process and deadlines for the exclusion list. It varies from year to year, depending on the secretary who's collecting the dossiers sometimes. So find out what your current deadlines are. Sometimes it's after the dossier is due. Sometimes the list is due with the dossier. And then know your campus processes for it. There's often a binder of all the people who are eligible to serve on a TPRC that you have access to. So you might want to know where that binder is stored. You might want to make an appointment to go look at it well before the deadline for the exclusion list. And it's also important to know who makes up your TPRC, because you don't want to waste an exclusion on someone who can't serve on your TPRC anyway. So your TPRC is made up of 3 members from your campus, but from outside your department or discipline, and 2 members from another one of the UHCC campus, usually UHCC campuses, from within your department or discipline. So you don't need to bother excluding members of your department. They're not eligible to serve on your TPRC. And you don't need to bother excluding members from vastly different departments than yourself on other campuses. They're not eligible to serve on your TPRC. So you can focus in on who is eligible. There is an important philosophy out there that we should never exclude anyone from our TPRCs because we are all professionals and we can trust each other to behave professionally on a TPRC. That is a valid philosophy. And I have known people who have used that philosophy very successfully all the way through their promotion process. On the other hand, there are people who like to fill up that exclusion list. And here are some of the reasons they like to do it. Maybe someone has a reputation for being a tough TPRC member and you want to put them on your list. Keep in mind that if you have that philosophy where you don't exclude anyone, a lot of people are putting this person, this tough TPRC member, on their lists, and that increases the chances that you'll get them. Maybe it's not really an earned reputation though. Another reason is you feel like they don't like you personally. Another reason you might want to exclude someone is that you feel like they don't like your professional approach, or maybe you're threatened by it, or maybe their professional approach is so vastly different you don't think they can really understand why you do what you do. Another reason, this one surprised me, when I first went up to tenure, I had no idea who to put on this TPRC list. But a colleague of mine asked me, we worked on this project together. Did you mention my name in the dossier? And I said, oh yeah, because we worked on this project together. And they said, this person from this campus hates my guts. So you need to put this person on your exclusion list, because if they see my name in your dossier, they're not going to like it. So that's another thing to consider. Issues with someone else that you might have mentioned, either by name or by position, that they can figure out who it is in your dossier. So take just a minute to write down a few names. Who might you put on your exclusion list? I'm not going to ask you to share this. Or maybe you have a trusted member of your department who can help you create an exclusion list. Who might that be? Okay, next thing is to expect notifications. Right after the TPRC reviews your dossier, this is going to be approximately in February or March. Whether the news is good or bad, whether you have all positive reviews or you have one or more negative reviews, you will get a notification. So you'll know how it's going in February or March. If it comes early April and you haven't heard anything, you might want to reach out to your chancellor's secretary to find out what's the holdup. And then your final notification of whether or not your dossier has been successful, you should receive by June 30th, 2022. No news is good news. And then please, please, please plan a reward for yourself for submitting the dossier. You would so deserve it. And it's going to feel like this huge weight is off your shoulders and you deserve a reward. So if you've got one planned ahead of time, then that way you'll be more likely to actually follow through on it. So plan a reward for yourself. And we're finally on step 6, park the car and walk away, but don't lose your keys. So now we have to talk about some possibly unpleasant things, not because they're likely, but because if you get a negative review or something unpleasant happens with your dossier, it's very emotionally stressful. So it's a good idea to kind of be aware ahead of time what the guidelines are and what the time frame is, so that you don't let the days slip by being upset without taking the action that you need to take. So if you have a negative review, watch the calendar. You have 5 days to express in writing the desire to examine the dossier, 10 days for promotion only dossiers. I have no idea why it's different. The opportunity will be provided to you within 10 days. And then 10 days after the examination, you could submit additional materials. My 2 pieces of advice are to remember that a happy ending is still possible. Many, many people have gotten 1 or even more than 1 negative review, but have ultimately still gotten their tenure and or promotion. So a happy ending is definitely still possible if you get a negative review. And the other super important piece of advice is to get help. It is so hard to write that additional material without a little bit of snark. It's really hard. I worked with a colleague who had a negative review to de-snarkify her response, and it took 4 or 5 rounds of de-snarkification until we got to the point where that it was not the tone at all in her additional material. And she was ultimately successful in getting her promotion. So it's really hard. Get help de-snarkifying. This person, by the way, is an expert de-snarkifier, and she will help lots of people on our campus who are in this situation. Are you denied? Were you denied? Know what your options are. You must be provided with an opportunity to examine the dossier within 10 days. If it's tenure, you have some limited, they're limited, but you have some limited options for appeal, and action must be taken within 10 days. Look at the contract. Here are these sections that deal specifically with this, but read through the contract, as much of it as you can, to look for information that may help you cope with this. If it's promotion only and the chancellor's negative conflicts with the TPRC's positive, you can request a promotion review panel within 5 days. But notice these timeframes are super tight. So that's why we're talking about this now, so that you know that you need to take action right away in order to take advantage of some of these channels of appeal. Does not mean that this is likely. I just want you guys to be aware. And then I really, really want you to follow through on that reward you promised yourself. Go to the beach. Go out to dinner, someplace really nice. Have a barbecue with your friends. Eat lots of chocolate. Buy yourself flowers. Okay, we're going to do another chat blast. What might your reward to yourself be after submitting the dossier? Type it into the chat, but don't press enter yet. Okay, press enter. Sleep, champagne, I love it. Computer toys, shopping. Yay. Lots of chocolate, somebody after my own heart. A nice dinner, personal time. Good, don't forget these, really truly do them. Okay, got another chat blast. What will you do today to work on your dossier or to prepare to work on your dossier? Today. Type it in your chat, but don't press enter yet. Okay, enter. Yay. Personal statement. Ooh, you guys are ambitious. I was thinking like calendar. Oh, there we go. Set a dossier writing schedule. Read your peer reviews. Oh, you guys are awesome. Okay, next one. There's just a few more. What will you do next week to work on your dossier? Type it in chat, but don't press enter yet. Okay, press enter. Good. Larger ambitions. Finish the charts. Oof. Press info. Good. Work on the leadership philosophy. I loved writing a leadership philosophy. It was totally fun. But I'm kind of crazy like that. Okay, next one. Just a couple more, I promise. What will you do before summer ends to work on your dossier? Type your answer in chat, but don't press enter yet. Okay, go ahead and enter. Ooh, complete it. Do a first draft. Leadership review, complete the dossier. Complete the appendixes. Oh my goodness. Those are going to take so long to assemble. Ask your buddy to review your narrative. These are awesome. You guys are so great. Okay. Are you more worried now or less worried now? Remember what you said before? Are you more worried now or less worried now? Type it into chat, but don't press enter yet. Okay, enter. More, oh, less. Not more, but not less. Same. Well, I was hoping it would be less, but it looks like that's not true for everybody. I don't mean to make it worse for you. But hopefully you have something to take away with you. The list of things to do, the list of people that you can use as resources, the list of buddies, the list of people you might exclude. Hopefully all of that will be useful to you as you move on through your dossier. You can reach me anytime. I'm at ldooley@hawaii.edu. I love answering questions about dossiers, although I may not know the answers for your particular campus. So be sure that you have a campus resource too. And that is it for my presentation. Your turn, Joyce.
Thanks, Leigh. So an important aspect to consider when writing your dossier is really knowing your audience and the perspective of those who are reviewing your dossier. So let's start this discussion circle by asking some of our administrators who are present here today to share their views, if they would, on what are some of the things they look for when they're reviewing a dossier, what elements are important to them to see, and any pet peeves that they might have. And I'm just gonna pick on somebody from my campus. I see Laura, you're here today. Laura Nagle is the Dean of CTE at Maui College. So if you don't mind, Laura, could you just share some of your thoughts on anything that you feel is important for us to know from your point of view?
Sure, thank you. Aloha everyone, Laura Leigh Nagle, Dean of CTE at Maui College. So I am speaking from the Maui College perspective, but just to give you, to share what that might be. Well, the first thing is I 5 really short tips. I'll keep them short. But I was a English instructor in my former life, not so long ago, like a year ago. But so one of the things that I always talk about with my students is the perception of professional language and academic language. And I often would have students who would come thinking that they suddenly had to write in this very uncomfortable, very awkward type of language, you know, the kind of, this email is heretofore to send notice to the reader of, like that type. So we really talked a lot about clarity and easy to read and easy to understand, and everyday language can actually be quite professional. So the first tip is easy to read, easy to follow, easy to understand, clear professional language without trying to make people think of a certain type of kind of awkward language that some people misunderstand that to mean. So number 1, easy to read, easy to follow. 2, really show the heart of what you do. And that's why it's so important to write in your natural voice, because that is when your true spirit will come out. And you do that by showing us you as a teacher, as a counselor in action. And that's where you embed little examples of those interactions throughout. 3, the so what's. I totally re-emphasize what Leigh shared. The so what's are so important. Every time you share what you do, the why that matters, why that informs your teaching, why that helps your students, why that leads to you as a leader. 4, having references, right? What are your standards? For your teaching philosophy, what types of learning development theory do you use? Or maybe in your industry, what are the standards that you might refer to? There must be something external to just your own mind that you can use as a reference for developing your ideas around teaching philosophy and strategies. And then number 5, just a spirit of continuous improvement. So often that comes through assessment and assessment practice, referring to outcomes. How do you know your students are learning what you're trying to set forward? And then how do you know what to improve, and how do you try, and how do you know that works? And then what do you do as a result? So just that cyclical cycle of improvement. So those would be our 5 recommendations. Mahalo.
Thank you so much, Laura. That's very, very helpful to hear. Frankie Harriss is here. She's the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs from Kauai Community College. Frankie, are you willing to share some of your thoughts?
Sure. It was an excellent training, by the way, hit most of the main points, and Laura's reiterating some of the other main ones. So that's definitely good. I just, rather than repeating them all, add a few things that definitely stand out for me. One of those is concision. Some folks get the impression that I need a tome, and you cover absolutely everything, but you want to consider some of your reviewers are having to go through quite a few of the dossiers, and when it's taking more than 8 to 10 hours to get through one, it's definitely not concise enough. So you want to use your evidence also very effectively, and whichever format you're using to address your dossier, and you were given a few really good options today, just making sure that you use data and facts and evidence. And if you can visualize that evidence in graphs and tables, that helps the reader or the reviewer, and also minimizes your text. That's fantastic to do when and where you can. Another thing that I would say is, for me, this is a continuous quality improvement process. No one expects perfection of anyone, but what I'm hoping to see are some really positive, constructive stories about what individuals have taken on board and how they've learned and how they've grown as professionals, and maybe applied some comments and suggestions, whether that's through student evaluations or peer evaluations, or if applicable, former reviewer comments. Even sometimes your reviewers may not offer the most constructive and professional comments themselves, but don't get drawn into that. And so I definitely echo that concern on don't get drawn into that. You keep your professionalism, don't be snarky, and just try to remain constructive, positive, and professional everywhere you can. And you don't have to agree with every comment you're given, but just so long as that's done professionally and respectively, and keep it on a constructive tone. I would recommend that one. And having that proofreader will help you, as suggested earlier. It would also help you if your tone is going off track. Sometimes I see someone make a statement and it's like, boy, I hope they didn't mean it the way it came across. But you definitely want to be sure, since this is in writing and your colleagues are looking at it, that you know what you're saying and how you're saying it. is well said and positively said. And then overall having a theme, whether that's your theme that you're using, if you're a teaching faculty, you're teaching philosophy, and or if you're adding on leadership, it's nice for me to I'm kind of reading a story about your practice and your growth. And if I know from the outset what your philosophy is, and then you're helping me with that, understand why you are doing particular things in your practice, it ties back to that philosophy. I also find that very useful and helpful in understanding your practice. And I'll also echo the so what's and the list of things that you get if you don't talk about what you have done after participating or as a result of participation, how those experiences have now impacted positively your practice and things you might now do instead because of those experiences. Again, it just makes you really interesting and tells compelling stories and gets me excited about what I'm reading. So those are always nice.
Thank you so much. Kay Ono is also here, Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, former Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs. Kay, would you help us out as well and share some of your thoughts on elements of a great dossier?
Sure, my pleasure. Leigh, thanks for a great presentation. The first thing I wanted to comment was on the exclusion list. When I remember filling my first one out, I had my colleagues from my own division tell me who to include on that list. And I said, I don't even know the person. And they said, trust me, put the name on. So fill up your list, but don't worry about putting anyone that is lower rank or equal rank than you. Remember the rules about your review committee has to be at the level in which you are applying for. So don't waste one on someone who's not a higher rank than you. Teaching philosophy is a big thing in our college. They aren't teaching philosophies. I call them more teaching methodologies. So teaching philosophy should take, if you have a good solid one, it will take you throughout all your promotions, which I think is good. We saw a lot of double and triple dipping throughout the years in the different service categories. People didn't know where to put them. So I would suggest if you just have like a little spreadsheet, you know, as you do these activities and keep track, sort of categorize them, just, you know, put the activity and put an X in one of the columns, then you know where it goes. I love Leigh's fact that she gave you the different faculty categories in which you're applying for. I actually do a little table. I go through the contract, the faculty expectations for that rank, and I list them. And as I review the dossiers, I would put the person's accomplishments right next to it. And at the end, I would see the pukas. I would see what was missing. So if you do that, you'll find out where you need to beef up certain areas. Peer evals. We sometimes, unfortunately, we have faculty who do not, they might do a peer eval, but they don't do the written one. So then people feel they have to scramble and go get one. I always say, don't worry about it. List, like put all the people that you have asked, and then you don't have to rat them out, but then you'll find out they won't have a report in the back, but you have completed the number of evals that are required. So those are some of the tips I would give. The last one, be sincere about your self-assessment, self-reflections. If you had a really low score on an eval, on a teacher eval or a student evals, you know, address it. Don't ignore it. Don't bury it. Address it, and make sure that you address all those recommendations from previous TPRCs, DPCs, or DCs. So good luck, everybody. It's really, you know, just take the time to do well and do consult with your peers. They will help you a lot to get through this process. And I believe in shopping after you submit a dossier. Good luck.
Thank you so much. That's such a great reward thing. Now, let's just open it up to anyone who wants to make a comment, a helpful comment, or even those who have a question for us. Any other questions? Just unmute yourself and speak up.
I have a question.
A quick
Okay, great.
question.
Megan?
Oh, sorry.
No, either way, Megan, you can go first.
Okay, mine's actually kind of not really related to anything specifically we've talked about today. It's actually a holdover question that I have from last week's workshop, if that's okay. So I know in these new online documents, it's all about hyperlinking everything so that it's easy for our readers to get through and access all of our appendices and stuff. I noticed though that in the folders, we can't link entire folders. So I organized mine where I have like my primary duties, and then within that I have subfolders. So for my syllabi, my evaluations, that stuff. I can't link an entire folder to my document though, it appears. I can only link specific files within a folder. Is that true?
Sandra, would you answer that question?
Yes, that's true. You can't link an entire folder. They're
Okay.
files. Mhm.
Is it okay? Does everything have to be hyperlinked now? Or is it okay just to say, see appendix 1.1 for all the things?
That's fine. You don't have to hyperlink everything. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think I have a few questions. One of them, and I think this applies to at least several of us at my campus. A few of us had babies during the semester, one of the semesters that's being covered in our write-up. And then of course we had COVID. So I know that's affecting everyone. Is it appropriate? Because I think, although I still do a lot, I don't think that it's quite the same scope as it is like in semesters I'm not giving birth to someone. Is it appropriate to say something about that somewhere? Like about that personal circumstance or anything? I thought this was a good question since we have administrators present.
Anybody wants to take that? Laura or Kay or Frankie?
Well, if no one's going to answer.
I'll let Kay go.
Oh, okay. Sandra, no, you go first.
Oh, I was going to ask, what is your employment status? Because if you're working full time, then the expectation is that you have a full load. So if
I completed everything.
oftentimes if someone is on maternity leave, then they're on leave for a portion of the semester, and so then typically, unless you got you received approval ahead of time that the semester was going to count toward your promotion or even tenure, if you're out for more than 30 days of the semester, then that semester doesn't count toward.
Yeah, I was just on sick leave for 3 weeks. That's all I had. So,
okay.
But I was caring for a little human being. I'm kind of an overachiever, and I think a lot of people normally are in our industry. And I still did a lot. It's just that it's not real clear how much is expected. You know, it's not like a real clear rubric like that, you know, in terms of how much community service, how much campus service, how much professional development. And for me, it felt a little like, well, due to, you know, like being tied at home a little more, both for COVID and my son, you know, I didn't get as much as I normally do, you know, but I do have all those categories, and I did do my job, and I am still in leadership roles and all that kind of stuff.
I'm actually not an administrator, but we actually had a mentoring group this past semester, and we discussed heavily, actually, women in academia and how sometimes women having children is used to set them back from the, you know, you lose a whole year from your tenure and promotion. That's a lot, and it isn't right. And we had people from our Title IX address that. So I think if you have concerns about, well, did I do enough or whatever, it sounds like you're fine. You only took 3 weeks off, bless your heart. It sounds like you did what you have to do, and we all have family things. We're not like, sometimes it seems like it's 100 hours a week, but that's not what is the expectation. So I think if you have Was I muted that whole time? No.
Just for the last part.
Oh, okay. I would address it with your Title IX, but really, if you check the boxes and you have done what is required for your desired level, I believe that this is not something that you should allow to hold you back. That's what I got from the semester-long conference I went to. Thank you.
Erica, this is Kay. So I would suggest one or two things. I would say, talk to your division chair. And remember, your tenure promotion or promotion is over a period of time. So that's why you need to look at the entire time that you are being assessed for your tenure and promotion or promotion, and see, have you met the expectations according to the contract? And I think by talking to your colleagues that know you well and what you have done, they will be able to tell you, yeah, you're good. Or, well, you can always delay promotions too. But 3 weeks, then the level of your performance should shine through. And I would say, talk to your division chair for guidance.
And I'm
Thanks,
not
guys.
sure how much else this would help as far as necessarily how you navigate that. So I echo Kay's advice is good. And you might even want to ground, if you put things in with HR and appear to be sure how you're addressing it. But I think another interesting point that where you might be able to weave this experience in and how you're applying it is how you might use your experience to consider students who are similarly have small children or just had a child, and especially if they're a single parent, and what you might be able to do in your practice also, and have done to be very understanding of your students who are in this circumstance. And certainly during COVID, this has come to the forefront of how women often, were in those tough situations where it can impact your career, and often we're the ones making the sacrifices. And it's great that our nation is finally moving forward a little bit in that way. So I think you have some good stories to potentially tell there, but you'll just want to use care into how you use that within the dossier, I guess.
Thank you so much.
Erin, were you going to pose something, some kind of idea? Or?
At this point, no, I would just say a couple questions that did come up. We do have a question in the chat that we can post to our administrators as well, or maybe even to Leigh, if you could just do a quick review. One of the questions was about the exclusion topic, and who, when, and from what do I need to exclude someone? So if you could just do a real quick review of that.
Sure, no problem. So your dossier will have several levels of review, and one of those levels of review is your TPRC, or Tenure and Promotion Review Committee. And that committee consists of 5 members, 3 from your campus that are not in your department or discipline, and 2 from another campus that are in your department or discipline. And you are contractually allowed to exclude up to 10 people from serving on that TPRC. Now, there are already people who are not eligible to serve on that TPRC. As Kay reminded us, you have to be, the people who serve on that TPRC have to be in the rank to which you are applying or higher. So don't waste an exclusion on someone who's not at your rank to which you're applying or higher. Also, people who are in your department are not eligible to serve on your TPRC on your campus. People who are in your department on your campus are not eligible. And people who are not in your department or a similar department on other campuses are not eligible to serve. So you don't want to waste an exclusion on any of those. Also, be aware of your campus's processes for creating this exclusion list and the deadlines for creating the exclusion list. Many campuses have like a binder that lists everyone who's eligible to serve on a TPRC, and you should be able to have access to that binder and flip through it and look at the names and see who's eligible to serve on a TPRC like yours, and then select names from there. Does that answer the question?
I think that was great. That sounds great. I have another question that came in, and This is for someone who's going up for tenure and promotion. So they had completed their first contract renewal. And so they are asked, and then a second contract renewal, and they just want to confirm that when they're doing their tenure and promotion dossier, that they include all 5 years, rather not just from the contract renewal, their last contract renewal to the tenure and promotion. So just wanted to confirm that. Just want everyone to hear that. Is that correct? Yep. So
Yeah,
getting
that's correct. You've got to cover from the time of your hire.
very good. All right. Let's see. Another question that came in is that for someone who's doing their first contract renewal and they want to know if they should include their summer load in their dossier. Anyone wants to?
Summer work is optional. You can include it if you want to, you don't have to, unless you're 11 month. If you're 11 month, you got to include it. But if you're 9 month, summer work is optional to include.
Good. Thanks, Leigh. Another question that's come in is the TPRC different for each applicant? And yes, so the TPRC is, I think that's Sandra's office. Are you folks the ones that kind of coordinate the different TPRCs with the campuses?
Yep, we coordinated with all the chancellors.
Which is a huge process. And so just from, if you're ever assigned to TPRC and you know that you have a conflict, please let them know very, very early so that they're not scrambling around at the last minute to rearrange your TPRCs as well.
Alrighty, so any other comments about perhaps about writing style or citations or academic writing? Anybody wants to make a comment about teaching theory? Any other questions for us? Or for the administrators, or Sandra is here today?
I have one more question that has come in. So this question is actually directed to Kay because you have such great advice for us, but we wanted to know if you could explain more about what to do if we do not receive a peer evaluation. So how should a person write about it in the dossier? So for instance, sometimes we're asking people for peer evals and they take forever to get it to us. How can we address that?
This is what I did, and this is what I have recommended to other people. So you don't rat out in the narrative the person who did not send you their peer eval. But in that section in the narrative, I would actually put a chart and list by semesters, like fall, 2019, and I would list the people and what class they attended. So it was like a chart. And so I would have 2 each semester, let's say you're going for tenure and promotion. I would list 2 each semester. And then I usually in the narrative, I would put some comments, about good qualities teachers found in my teaching. But if there are areas for me to work on, I would list those and address those suggestions. But in the back, I would put in my appendices, I would put all the different evals in there. And if one's missing, then they know that person just did not hand it in. Or you can even put, I had 6 in-person evals or 8 in-person evals.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Or were you muted? Did you have more? Okay, well, I see a question here about the contract renewal documents and the deadlines for that. This person is asking if it's still that October date, and I believe it's in March, right, Sandra, for contract renewals?
Contract renewal deadline is different for every campus, so they have to find that out from their chancellor's office or their administrators.
Okay, does that satisfy everything? Anybody else has a question or comment, perhaps?
So just to let you know, Kay texted me and she's sorry she wasn't plugged in, so she might have been kicked out. So
Oh, shucks.
Yeah.
Okay. Is she going to be joining again? We can let her in. She had some great advice.
I'm not sure. I think she's trying, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Any last words from our administrators? Okay, well, if not, Mahalo.
Joyce,
yes.
I'm sorry, Joyce. There is a comment there from my colleague from HCC
Okay, great.
about this one from Richard Road. If anyone can address this comment, if it's accurate. Maybe Sandra says the school assigns you a school site for your dossier for upload and promotion. Yeah. Do you find it, Erin? You wanna take that one?
I'll
Yeah.
read it. The school assigns you to a school site for your dossier input for upload and promotion. Once you upload your files, can you delete but not add more info? This means you have to prepare your work in other apps, then upload the completed file. Once again, you can't edit it once uploaded, only delete and upload to a new version. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if we're using different terminology, but what it is, it's connected to a shared drive. It's not a school site, but the system runs off of a shared drive. And so everything you put in there, then you just either link it to the drive or you can upload it from your Word docs. But if you don't want it there, then you can delete it and then you can upload something else. Is that what you're asking? Or did you want to edit something directly in our online tenure promotion system? Is that what you're wanting to do?
He's saying
I think
here, we
you're-
do have training for the procedure to upload dossier. Will we, I think he's asking, will we have training for the procedure to upload dossier online? Haha, I have lots of questions.
Actually, our next week's training, we're going to cover everything. We're going to have navigation through the system. We're going to have a couple of faculty who will actually share what they did in theirs. And then we're also going to have a group of our instructional developers to teach basics of the Google Drive and things like that. So if you can attend one of our sessions the next week, Tuesday or Thursday, you might find that helpful. And after that, the instructional developers are going to try and make these little video snippets so that whoever can't attend will have it available on our website or somewhere accessible if you need help with these kinds of technical things. But please attend. You might find that helpful.
Thanks, Sandra and Joyce.
Thank you, Gretel. Kay's back. Kay, do you have more comments for us and helpful thoughts?
Sorry, I moved back to my faculty office and I had to hunt for my plug for my laptop. So that's why I disappeared, because my battery died. So hopefully you were able to get enough information. I just list the names in the dossier in the narrative, and I put the actual forms in the back. And if you want to address it in the back, I would just say, put, that you didn't receive one. They'll know about it. But don't elaborate it, obviously, in your narrative. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I had one more quick question.
Sure, Megan.
So this is in the spring semester, I did my very first independent study course with a student, a 299 at KCC. And so since this was added on to my normal primary teaching responsibilities, are there any recommendations for how to fold that into my narrative? Should I include it with my regular coursework? Where would I stick this thing I did?
That's a good question, Megan. I'm not quite sure where you would want to put it. Was it considered part of your primary duties, or was it considered like a campus service? Do you know?
You know, I honestly don't really know. So I taught my normal course load. This was in addition to what I was already teaching for the semester. I had one student who had taken several classes with me. She was coming close to transferring to UH Manoa, really interested in the field, and I was working with her on a project that she could use towards her honors thesis when she transferred.
Were you paid as overload, or you just did it?
It was a 299 that I submitted. So I think I got TEs for it.
Because most of the times at our college, we do not pay for people who do independent study.
Yeah, I didn't get paid.
Right. And so if you didn't get paid because you weren't offered any TEs, overload or anything, then I would put a service to your college.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but if you're compensated anyway, then that's a different story.
Okay, so this is just such a newbie question. Should I talk to my department chair about that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I see that there's no questions or comments, so let's just close. So mahalo to Leigh and everyone who contributed to the discussion for an informative session today. We learned so much. I think you'll agree with me. And thank you to all of you for making the time in your schedule to join us today. Please check your email within the next few days, as I will be sending out the links to the resources and the recording from today's session, as well as an evaluation form for you to complete. Our last Dossier Writing 101 series session will be next week, Wednesday. You probably remember today's sort of auditing, we came on a Thursday, July 28th at 3:00 p.m. And the topic will be evaluation and assessment in your dossier. So once again, thank you for joining us today. See you soon.